So, welcome to Instructure. I'm Robyn Schell, and I'm going to be talking about breathing life into your online presence. First of all, I wanted to share you a little bit about my home institution. This is Fraser University. It's in a suburb in Vancouver, BC, Canada, and the institution's on top of a mountain, and that's looking north. Just to give you a feeling for where we are and where we're coming from. And also want to make a little connection from my hometown to Park City. We have both hosted the Winter Olympics. And actually the terrain and the mountains and so on is reminiscent of Vancouver and Whistler, the resort town that hosted the Winter Olympics a couple of years ago in the Vancouver area. And now to launch into my presentation itself about online. Developing an online presence. And I have to rustle my papers here. First of all, how many people have been an online student? Lots. And been an online instructor? Lots of you. Let's say all of you have been students and instructors virtually. So my presentation is going to be oriented to how the instructor can develop the online presence. That's the perspective. And when I was a student online, in one of the courses I was in, we had the feeling that our instructor wasn't there. He wasn't reading our emails. Was he AWOL or absent, or was he just a super busy person that couldn't get back to us? And eventually we found out that he was in Hawaii for a 2-week period, and we didn't realize it. But I think that feeling is, although it's elusive, we all know what it feels like. And developing an online presence, I think the best definition is being together and being there. That's what I'm talking about. But the students still need guidance and they need structure. And I'm going to talk about some of the tips and techniques for developing your online presence as an instructor. This little guy on the side here, he's setting the tone for the course. And in Canvas, you have a variety of media for doing what I'm describing next. The welcome message. You could do a video, for instance, and I saw a great one at Ontario College of School. It's got a long name. Ontario School, College of Art, University, OCADU. The instructor was in the video in the middle of the page, and she presented, she said at the top, here's the global settings, and over here's your course settings, and it was really quite effective and funny too. You can use text, you can use a lot of announcement, but a lot of people use discussion forums. That's sort of the old standby. But the important thing is to say who you are and what your course is about. It's a chance for you to showcase what makes your course special, what makes it stand out, what makes it unique. And you also want to acknowledge that some students are new to online learning, they're new to your institution, and you are aware that who they are. For instance, they're taking your course because it's a prerequisite, acknowledge it right up front. Or they're a cohort, so they're working through a sequence and they're in your particular course. So you're letting them know you know a bit about them. And you also can describe your expectations, what you expect of them, and make that clear, and how they can succeed in the course. Provide a little information about yourself. Tell them about, on a professional basis, how you came to this point, why you're teaching that course, how it came down. For instance, I'm an educational technology master's student, and I'm a PhD student, and I've also been working in technology, online technology, for quite a long time. Give a little personal note too. Sometimes I mention my standard poodle, Winslow. Let them know I have a pet, because a lot of people can identify with that little personal tidbit, or a sport you indulge in. Sailing, that's what I do. I sail around the Gulf Islands. And after I finished introducing myself and making my group welcome, done my welcome message, then I segue to asking the students to introduce themselves to one another. So you can set a few guidelines. You don't want them to write a book. You just want them to write a few lines, maybe add a picture, attachment, describe what you're expecting from this brief introduction. A discussion forum is often a place where our instructors start with their introductions and welcoming. And if you get a chance, and I know this is not easy if you have a really large course, like the anatomy course at UBC is like 500 students, but you have TAs, you have other people who can respond to the introductions that the students made, and you personalize that response. And it means a lot if you can do it. And this picture is about making the bridge, your house to their house, and making them at home. Again, addressing the student by name if you have the opportunity in different venues, messages, commenting on the students, posting, and there's many different ways that you can bring their name into the picture and make them know that you know them a bit, you know their name. You know some about the details they had in their introduction, and that's a point you can bring up later to leverage a broader conversation. But at this point, you're probably ready to find out what are the students bringing to the course. Students always bring something to the course. If it's a professional cohort, they're bringing their practices and their expertise to the course, and you'll want to know more about that. But all students bring a certain expertise and knowledge and previous experience to the course. And this is an opportunity for you to find out more and adapt your course to suit the students that are in your course in the same way that we do an audience analysis before doing a session or presenting. You could do, for instance, a short ungraded survey because there is no grade. It sort of takes the pressure off. You can leave it open for a while and collect data that way. You can ask a course-related question about their practice and make a tie-in that way in an online forum. You can begin to address those gaps in knowledge as you progress through your course. And then once a few weeks have gone by, it may be a good chance for you to do this little assessment. Ask them for 3 things they like about your course, what they have found useful so far, what's good, and 1 suggestion that maybe of how you can improve. And if you have the time and it's possible, if you can implement those changes and the students see them, they know that you're listening to them and that they have offered valuable suggestions and they are value to you, and in fact you've implemented them. That's really of value to you and your students as well. Another idea is a quick poll. How many people use iClickers or something like it? Oh, not that many, really. Okay, well, iClickers is a sort of an instant polling. Often I've seen it used done in face-to-face if you have a blended course, like all our faculty are in a blended situation that I'm working with. And so you can get a really quick, dynamic poll where everyone sees the results. It's a shared experience if you're in a face-to-face situation portion of your blended course. For instance, we had a question, how many people, it was January and it's a gray day, how many people would prefer a sunny day or a cloudy day, just to show how it worked? It was really surprising how many people liked a rainy day. So they were in the right place, being on the Pacific Northwest. But it's a very interesting dynamic tool, and you might find it value to get a feel for who your peeps are in your course. In Canvas, you have the profile and the global settings, and you can add information there. You can add a little bit about yourself, and you can add a picture. And the photo is handy sometimes because you can put a name to a face. And sometimes I make a connection with another student in my course, and I will follow what they're saying because I know we're on the same wavelength. But some people don't feel comfortable with a photo of themselves, so that's fine. They can post the picture of their standard poodle Winslow, or a plant that they love in the Pacific Northwest. The point is that they have an image that you can connect with their name. This is also a good idea to ask the students what their expectations are of you and your course. And I think that 3 questions of what they like and one thing that they think you can improve is one venue for that, but you probably have other ideas about how you collect information about what their expectations are as well. Now, as we all know, facilitation, online facilitation is an art form. And coming up with that brilliant question for your online forum that sets the forum up is really, it's very difficult to come up with that perfect question that stimulates conversation and gets it moving that in a way that you're knowledge building and developing a professionalism. But Canvas has a couple of features which I have found of value, and one of them is the one where you can set the student must post one posting, an initial posting, before they see everyone else's posting. And I think that can be a value in 2 ways that may permit a more original posting from the student because they have to draw on their own expertise and knowledge and experience with that initial posting or the readings that you are hoping that they have read. And also, it prevents the student from just simply agreeing with other people that have already posted, oh yeah, I agree with Jane, or they don't get very deep into their answer and they're not promoting a deeper conversation and promoting knowledge building that you want to see. And when you are the facilitator, relating to the students, interacting on a regular basis is helpful, especially when you get to the point you can summarize what's happened so far, and then refocus the conversation. If they're getting off in too many tangents, you want to bring them back in, or maybe you're moving to the next level. And it all sounds very simple until you have to do it. And when I was a student and my instructor, this is just not that long ago, her specialty is research on knowledge building. She modeled all this. She made the great question on our reading, summarized, refocus, and so on. And then it was my turn. Each student had to do it, and that develops a real expertise, and this is something you can do in Canvas as well. Allow the student to develop the question, to lead the facilitation, summarize, refocus, and there's so much to be learned from that experience. Most online courses depend on asynchronous activities because they live in different time zones, they are in different areas of the country, they have professional obligations, family obligations, and but it's still important that you add some structure to the course that they can count on. And one of these is setting the turnaround time for your messages so that they know maybe for that course you do them on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and you share that information with the students so they know that that's when you're looking and they know the time frame that you will be responding to them. You can also have virtual hours. A lot of instructors have virtual hours where you can meet the instructors, let them know when that is and when you're there. But also, if something crops up and you can't keep to that structure, and that's only human, things come up, let them know that you're not available and why that is. And in Canvas, you can use announcements to let them know. For instance, if it snows at SFU, on that mountain, we're all panic-stricken. It's steep, it's slippery, we just run around in circles, and it's usually closed. And that's a time that we usually send out announcements about there's a change in the course. You're not going to be working on the course that day. You're not going to be present on Canvas, etc. You're not mobile. Of course, distance is good. Courses are good for overcoming those kind of obstacles, but it could be readings that have changed and so on. Just let them know. Set up the structure. Then if there's changes, let them know. In this way, with this constant regular interaction, you can set the pace for the course. You can let them know where they are in the course. And that orientation is really important when you're online. You feel isolated. You're not more than when you're in a face-to-face situation. So by setting the pace, letting them know you have accomplished this, done great work, now we're at this point in the course, and then next we're going to be going this direction, and there's our goal. And it allows you to do that as well. Change it up a little because variety is really the spice of life in online courses too. And meeting in a synchronous space and supporting real-time interaction is a nice venue for developing relationships and facilitating online work as well. And at our institution, we have a closed open source instance of Canvas, and we happen to use Blackboard Collaborate for our synchronous tool. We have a license for that. And has anybody used that type of tool, something similar? Yeah. So what it allows you to do is you can have real-time chat, and I found that different students respond to chat and like to use it than people who are face-to-face. You may have different people who like to talk to you face-to-face, but different people talk to you in the chat and in the synchronous situation. It's quite interesting. So you can bring in different groups if you're in a blended situation. I've used it for problem-based learning in a nursing program. So we have a medical case, and I'm encouraging the students to come up with their hypotheses about what this patient could have. I'm streaming videos to them, and so on. Some of you may know problem-based learning and how it works, and I did it in Blackboard Collaborate, and it's a handy synchronous tool. There's others. I think Susan Hawk is talking about an online sort of similar tool that they use in another presentation, Susan Hawk, and from Philadelphia. And also there's chat within Canvas, and there's conference available to you on the cloud. We don't have that yet, but it's another way for you to change it up. Another colleague of mine in the PhD course is an instructor, and he was telling me about how his role changes throughout his online course. So he begins being like super accessible, doing the welcomes, getting people started in the online forums, setting the standards, maybe setting up the rubrics, running people through the different activities without stakes, without grades, so they have a no-pressure situation to learn the different tools. And then about week 3, he announces to the students his role is changing. He's going to become more faded into the background, more the guide and the side, which we all know about, and become still facilitating, still supporting, still being there, and being a reference to other resources or helping people who are stuck, clarifying situations, the assignments, the readings, and so on if they need it, but overall becoming less central. And the students are becoming more central. So we have 2 fade out, in and out processes. You're hoping that the technology is fading into the background because you're building your online presence and developing that experience. And as an instructor, you're becoming less obvious and letting the students take over the process. And I think in Canvas, I see more evidence of a more student-oriented software or LMS. We've been with WebCT a long time, really, really long time. I can't tell you how long. Because it was invented in Vancouver, people have a strong commitment to WebCT. They've been in there maybe since the beginning of their careers. It's been around for 10 years. And when people first started to use WebCT, they tended to keep a lot of their readings there and their files there, and they used it like a content repository to begin with. So what I'm trying to do, not only share these ideas about developing your online presence, which might be a new concept to some of our faculty, but also to change the mindset of being content is king, and this is where you want to store your files. That's, I think, how a lot of people started out. But now we want you to change that hat. We want to transition to you are the producer, the creator of an online learning experience. And it's a major shift in a lot of faculty's mind to move from the earlier framework to this new concept. But of course, that's the way all learning is going, and I see Canvas might be a tool to help them achieve that. I'm just going to leave you with this little quote from a Canadian author. He writes science fiction. He's a blogger. And I hear his books are really good too. So thank you. That's my presentation, and I'm open for the questions and comments.